right. Michael T. McKibben is
Great to see you.
thank you. So this is another in the Morgan Report. Michael, I know we've had you on, especially early for the crypto conspiracy, and I got a lot of positive feedback because a lot of my people knew who you were. But for those that don't or tune in for
Hmm.
the first time, can you give me a brief background, please?
Okay, I'm going to start out with I'm the inventor of social networking. How's that for a
That's
opening?
provocative enough.
Yes. And I'm sure some people have just spilled their coffee. But basically, in the mid 90s, I landed a contract to rebuild AT&T's email system as Windows 95 was coming on the scene and email was just becoming commercially used. And so I ended up supporting the entire AT&T worldwide infrastructure on the development of the first email system, which really pretty much predated even Microsoft's Microsoft Exchange product, which is now Outlook. And during that time, I saw a very big Achilles heel in the market as the internet was developing along the lines of how do you do large scale collaboration in a large scale environment. And I could see that the entire tech world, and I'm talking about Microsoft, GroupWise, Oracle, AT&T, who am I missing? AOL. They all were going down a path called groupware. And we discovered that there was an Achilles heel in groupware as it pertained to a large scale mass collaboration product. It was okay with one company, even one large company, but it failed in looking at how do a million people attack or view one site at a time and without the whole internet coming to a grinding halt. So we went underground in my development operation. I formed a company called Leader Technologies, and we said, we're not coming out of here until we figure out how to do collaboration using the internet. And as we were doing that, we were watching, as we predicted, all the major players were going down that path over there. We were going down this path over here. And so we decided we're not telling anybody what we're doing. And we went underground, figuratively speaking, until we figured out how to do collaboration in a large scale environment. And in 1999, in December, we had the magic aha moment, and we discovered why the groupware approach that the whole technology market was in love with at that point, how they were going to fail. And so we put our heads down, and for the next 3 years, 3 or 4 years, we developed what now the market calls groupware, or not groupware, but social networking. And that wasn't even a term back when we invented it. And so that is something we filed patents on. We looked for patent attorneys in Washington to help us protect our idea. We knew it was innovative, and I had some of the top developers with most of the major world data systems in banks, in the Air Force, and telecommunications. And so I knew we had a team that was as good as anybody at Bell Labs, for example, or Microsoft. And so we invented what is called social networking. Then we went to Washington and began looking for a patent attorney worthy of this project. And on paper, we found somebody by the name of Professor James P. Chandler, who had been the director of the computer center at George Washington University as our patent attorney. And on paper, he was the best we could find. To cut a long story short, that was the good news. The bad news is we've discovered in the last 4 or 5 years that he was also the secret representative for intellectual property for the British Pilgrim Society and its minions in the United States, including its minions in the NSA, in the CIA, in the FBI, all major corporations that are aligned with the government on the back end were also his clients. And so what we, to our shock, a decade later discovered, he himself was the individual who leaked our source code to the IBM Eclipse Foundation, which then turned around and distributed our technology in 2004 to everybody, basically, to the entire Silicon Valley, to the military establishment, to telecommunications, to all the major media outlets. And so in 2004, our product came on the market, but it wasn't from our selling effort. And so you wind the story to now that everybody knows what we invented, and it doesn't seem that innovative now, but at the time it was truly innovative, and we ended up getting three patents on the technology: one for the basic platform, one for apps, and one for its use in the wireless technology. And we were awarded our first patent in 2006. We then sought a national law firm to strategize with us on which infringer do we go at first, because everybody was infringing, and we chose Facebook. So in 2008, we sued Facebook for patent infringement on 11 claims of our 35 claims in the first patent. And that the reason you do that is you don't need to use all of your claims in a patent to start a lawsuit. So we picked the top 11. We went to trial in 2010. We had a split verdict. The verdict was by a jury, after a battle of experts on both sides, that Facebook was indeed infringing our patent on all 11 claims. And then we watched the court system rally the troops around Facebook anyway, and made up a story that, this may sound humorous, but that we tried to sell our own patent too soon.
Well, I'm going to interject there, Michael, and not to cut you off, but you already hit the hot spot. The reason I've invited you on for this podcast is to talk about a quote unquote open secret or secret society called the Pilgrim Society. And we hear so much about the Masons and the Jesuits and other secret societies, but one that most people haven't heard of is the Pilgrim Society. Now, you and I have a fairly long history, and we both know about it. But let me just outline a couple things and turn it back.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But the Pilgrim Society, a century of influence, and have you ever wondered where the real good old boys meet to shape and perform the, let's say, global agenda? Briefly define the Pilgrim Society as the least discussed elite group in the Anglo-American Empire, and mention its founding year, 1902. So back to you, a brief outline of them, and we already know what they are capable of doing with what, let's say, unfortunately took place with Leader Technologies.
Okay, let me give you a conclusion, and then I'll step back. Our conclusion is, when the answer to the question that has been plaguing the alternative media for years is, who is really driving the bus in the United States? And what we discovered, not because we were looking for that answer, but we were looking for who stole our patent in the end. We know the attorney that did, but he was not driving the bus. And we then looked at, when did they do it, how did they do it, and who was involved. That was our quest that we started after the Supreme Court would not protect us on our patent. And that was the beginning of a trek that's taken us till now to figure out that in the end, if you go to the top of the pyramid, it's not the Masons, it's not the Illuminati, although there is a play there. The ultimate organization is the British Pilgrim Society that was founded, like you said, in 1902 by British aristocrats who were working to reorganize the British Empire around a secular, I wouldn't even say secular, I would say an irreligious to demonic empire that was driven by corporations and not by governments. And the corporations would have their main allies in the newspapers of the world. And so that was their plan. And they decided that they wanted to be a secret society. And this all came out of a vision of a man by the name of Cecil Rhodes, who actually formed the first corporatist British organization called the British South Africa Company. And as you recall from your history with gold and silver, the Rothschilds and Cecil Rhodes formed an organization called De Beers Consolidated Mining in South Africa, and this was to be the source of their cash and wealth and their leverage to basically carry out this scheme. And that has been the case to this day. They ended up monopolizing all of our banks, and this goes way back before De Beers. This goes back to the American Revolution and the involvement of Alexander Hamilton with the City of London, with the Bank of England, and with the London Assurance Company. And as we know, Hamilton organized our first 4 banks. And it wasn't because of his genius. He had 2 books that the histories tell us he read, and it was the history of the Bank of England. And then he pushed forward the model for the U.S. that was to be a carbon copy of what the Bank of England did in the way they created currency, the way they leveraged gold and silver, and that was to be controlled basically by the Rothschilds, but not only the Rothschilds. There were other players involved, the Barings, the Warburgs, the Schiffs. There were a number of banks involved, but the Rothschilds were really behind the scenes driving this bus. And so the Rothschilds were quite involved in the formation of the Pilgrim Society in 1902. And then Cecil Rhodes died in 1902 unexpectedly at a young age. And therefore, the Rothschilds took over things like the Rhodes Scholarships. Because in Rhodes's world, the Oxford University was going to be the place where they trained their future personnel for the Pilgrim Society. He decided specifically that he wanted it to be a secret society, and he liked many of the secrecy practices of the Jesuits. He liked many of the secrecy practices of the Masons, and before them, or not before them, but some of the things that were developed called the Illuminati, which never really organized as a society, but it was used by the Rothschilds so that they could get status to become get honors in the United Kingdom, become knights, become lords, become barons. They developed the Illuminati to qualify themselves for those positions.
I'll just interject here for a moment. So just to kind of outline what you said, I mean, it's highly exclusive, invitation only. And some of the past members are U.S. presidents from Theodore Roosevelt pretty much onward, all the British prime ministers, all the prominent banks on both sides of the pond in the U.S. and throughout Europe. Corporate and media magnates are also participants. And the meetings are private, and there's no official minutes. And it is the absolute pinnacle of what we'll call, in polite terms, discretion. If you want to call secret society, you're probably on point. And the relationship that they have overlaps, but not direct connections to the Council on Foreign Relations, the Royal Institute of Affairs, which is Chatham House Rules, the Bilderberg Group, and the British Advisory and U.S. Power Elite. So just to get a firm grasp, people, that this is, again, something that very many people don't really even know of the Pilgrim Society yet. And I agree with Michael, whether it's the tippy top of the pyramid or not, I'm not going to commit that far, but it's darn close, if not the top. I'll put it in those terms. And it's, to me, I think the battle that's going on, I'm going to go a little off course here, and we could come back. It looks to me as if there's either a contrived good guy, bad guy, or a real good guy, bad guy. I haven't made up my mind yet, because after reading 1984 and almost having it realized, we're just doing these perpetual wars just to keep things going? Or is there a real breakaway saying, no, I'm sick and tired of the Anglo-American Empire, which is what we're discussing, and we, the BRICS, want to get away from you guys. Now, is that true? Is it true or false? It's true that they're formed and it's happening. Is it really that they want to break away. And I'll add one more thing, give it back to you, Michael. After looking at ISO 222, it looks like the tip of the pyramid's still there, meaning that the way that this new structure in the new financial system is going to be orchestrated all goes through this mandate ISO 222. They don't care if you're BRICS or Pilgrim. They're gonna
Right.
take care of the money problem anyway. So I would love your opinion on it, and thank you for coming on, because I really get excited because not only are you brilliant in my opinion, but you have a deep understanding of what I call street smarts, because you got beat up so darn bad that you had to learn it kind of, let me just put it in polite terms, the hard way. Anyway,
Yeah.
you say.
Right. I didn't choose this path. It chose me. And when the Supreme Court didn't protect us, I had to decide whether I was just going to tuck my tail between my legs and go away, or figure out what was going on. And being a civil engineer, I like to solve problems. And so we started looking at how do we solve this problem, and we discovered the Pilgrim Society. We weren't looking for it.
Yeah.
We discovered that the Rothschilds were in the executive committee of the Pilgrim Society. But one of the things, in hindsight, now that we've probably seen the edges of what's going on in this world now, and we can define them. And so when you say, I don't know if I'm ready to say that the Pilgrims are at the top of this, I get it. I understand, because it's just too hard to believe for most people. But I'll say, this engineer, after living with this data for 12 years, and that's what we've been doing, we've been digging for 12 years to find judicially recognizable evidence that would put these people in jail. That was our objective, not to document any hearsay at all. So what we determined is that the reason we haven't heard of them is because these people they've taken over media, they've taken over the spying business, and they have had unlimited funds to ply their efforts exactly the way they wanted to, and they could crush anybody that would even get close to them in terms of disclosure. And so that's why we haven't heard of them. They control the media. So if any news ever comes out, it's crushed at the editor level in the city. So it never gets to the public consciousness. What we're seeing now is the public consciousness, with the data that we discovered 6-7 years ago, is now just becoming aware of what we discovered long ago. And I'm not one of those guys who said it's all the Rothschilds. I've never been that. In fact, I didn't care. But what we have discovered is that when you as a family are given unlimited access to the governance of whole countries, and you control their financing, you have a lot of power. And so why wars all the time? Because that's a part of the old economic system. Whenever the usury bubble bursts, in order to maintain control, they've got to change the game. And a war is a beautiful way to do it, because it deflates the values in the country that you're tearing apart. And then you fund your buddies to go back in and build it back up, like we did in the Marshall Plan. And that Marshall Plan was a huge Pilgrim Society scam. I mean, most people don't realize that in 1942, Franklin Roosevelt, a Pilgrim, declared that over 50,000 patents from inventors in Axis countries would be confiscated by the United States and given to U.S. corporations. That is a fact. We show the original documents on our website. And it was a feeding frenzy. So no wonder post-war, there was a post-war boom. We had many of the best ideas in the world all given to our corporations for free.
Wow.
And that's the value we've been living on our whole lives.
Yeah.
And it was all theft. So when you look at a economic situation where that is the basis of the economy, isn't that demonic?
Sure.
It can't be you can't describe it any other way. It's not an individual doing this. This is a demon who is pressing on society to get his way.
Yeah. Well, let me interject. Do you think the BRICS is show or go? Do you think it's just for show, And from what I really think, that really, based on how these bankers are all aligned together, or is it really someone wants to break away from the Anglo-American Empire?
Well, I think that people would love to break away. There are people, but when you've got 120 years of machinations that have embedded yourselves in all phases of our commerce and economy and their banking, you can't unseat that easily. And
Right.
I think this is why they were so freaked out when Trump came on the scene. Because, I mean, there is some indication that Trump was aware of the Pilgrim Society. Certainly, JFK's father was. JFK, John Kennedy, or what was his name? What was JFK's father's
Joseph.
name?
Joseph.
Joseph Kennedy was a U.S. ambassador to the U.S. There's a clue. He was a pilgrim. And it looks like he could not even stop the assassination as a pilgrim, because JFK specifically warned. He said he warned us of secret societies. Who was he talking about? Well, of course it was this. It was the Pilgrim Society, because he knew a lot about it. His dad told him. And then he said, I'm going to break the CIA into 10,000 pieces. Well, he knew that the CIA was an outgrowth of the Five Eyes agreement, a secret intelligence agreement that we formed with the British, or the British forced down our throats, more likely, in 1946. So anything that the CIA did was taking orders from the City of London. He knew that too. So he had to go.
Yeah. Let me push back a little bit, playing devil's advocate. You know, I'm on your side, but just for,
Go
what the
ahead.
audience is going to say, oh, come on, you guys. Oh, those guys, you know how it goes. So the criticism or controversy, I mean, we see it as an elite steering committee, basically making policy, owning the media, allegations, which I believe are true, is they have extreme influence over foreign policy. They're advancing the banking and corporate control, which really, I laugh about. I have to digress slightly here, Michael, but people think the president, he's the most powerful person on the planet. Are you kidding? Corporations are the one that's write all the rules in Congress. I mean, the Congress critters are just there to take money for free, smile for the camera, and let the lobbyists write the rules for them. How do you come up with, 10,000 pages overnight and put it out and say, we
Right.
want to propose this new law? Come on.
Sounds like
But
the Patriot Act.
in defense of the non-thinkers, I'll call them, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but look, there's one purpose of my life, is to promote freedom and to get people to think. So having said that, the defense from the supporters, or what the media will tell them, is, hey, what's wrong with you guys? It's just a social club for important people. So what would you tell them to do? You're not going to watch another podcast, because if you and I aren't going to convince them, that's fine. Dig it out and prove it for yourself. What book would you have them read? I mean, I've got your latest one here. Would this be enough of a primer, let's say, that would help them understand what's really going on?
Yeah, that relates to the Rothschilds in and Israel. And in the process of discovering how these guys operate, we discovered this overarching influence of the Rothschilds on the development of Israel. And we discussed why they've been so successful in what they've done and how they've done it. And we've also talked to evangelicals in there of, you need to take a fresh look at your belief that the Bible's Israel is not this modern state, and we show examples of that. But in terms of why they have been so successful, we're talking about clever people. I don't know that they're smart, but they're very clever, and they have so messed with our heads through their control of the media that we don't know what to think. And one of the things that they have put in our heads, for those who are still asleep, is that all these things with conspiracy theories are to be rejected out of hand. And even now, I've attempted to use Grok and see how Grok positions this, and they have certain organizations with information labeled as right-wing conspiracy theorists, and that's the way they label it. So if anybody's just out there trying to use find out a little bit more about this, they're going to see all of us labeled as conspiracy theorists. But what we need to realize is that term itself was built by this mind control media group to protect their involvement with the Kennedy assassination. That's now becoming more evident to people after all these years. It's still not clear, but we're convinced that it was the Pilgrims. And by the way, Lyndon Johnson was a Pilgrim. But going back to your thing, this is just a cigar smoking, brandy sipping group of people.
Yeah, right.
They're harmless. We're talking about the most greedy, most power hungry people in the world ever. They were called the robber barons for a reason
Yeah.
because they were criminals. And so we're talking about a group of people that don't have time for these brandy sniffing events. But what they do, they needed a way, an excuse for their people to get together on a regular basis to layer their plans going forward and to keep control of the center. And that's the way they do it, through these events, these banquets. And of course, their media people, they order them to say, well, this was a nice event. It was great for people to get together. And all the ladies looked really lovely, didn't they? Oh, yes,
Yeah.
certainly.
Yeah.
And yes, they had the beautiful hats, and they're just the nicest people. They're all philanthropists. Philanthropy is a way for them to hide their criminality. And so anytime you see somebody's a philanthropist, oh, they've got dirty money. They're trying to assuage their consciences, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So the idea of getting together is a key issue for them. They're all over the world. There aren't that many of them. There are a couple thousand, 4,000, and they're all over the world. So how do they get together? Well, they have these nice banquets, and everybody comes and they get all dressed up. That's for the public consumption. The average tabloid reader, they're all fascinated by those kinds of events by the uber wealthy. But in fact, these people are sitting there recruiting people, organizing their events, agreeing on their strategies. And when you say, is there a group at the top? I mean, some people say there's a committee of 300. If you've ever organized anything in your life, can you
Mhm.
ever imagine having 300 people having a say in what happens in any organization? I mean, churches have a hard time with their parish councils.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't happen. I was a management consultant. I worked with teams of large organizations, and trying to get them, help them come together in their strategy for their corporate environment. And I can tell you for sure, not even 12 people is too many for any kind of organization to keep a unity. So within the structure of the Pilgrim Society, there is a small group called the Executive Committee. The current commander, basically, of the executive committee of the Pilgrim Society is, I think he's a Viscount now, Viscount Jock Stirrup, who was the defense, the chief of defense for the British Army. He's the one running the show. I can guarantee you, he is the guy you need to look at.
Was Warren Buffett in the Pilgrim Society?
I've never seen his name.
Okay, just curious.
Never seen his name. It wouldn't surprise me, because we don't have the records were kept secret, have been kept secret until recently. We've started seeing them talk about who their members are. They put up a list in London of prominent members of the Pilgrim Society, and it is a who's who of people that you and I know from our upbringing. We're talking Johnson. We're talking Walter Cronkite. We're,
Yeah,
I mean, and there's I won't go through the list because it's basically everybody you know.
sure. Wow, such an eye opener. Well, I know we are going to do another one, but it's really, really matters. I mean,
It
this is a
does.
fight for freedom above and beyond everything. And I've devoted my life to, honesty and in the monetary system, not to allow a certain group to, get something for nothing and control basically the whole planet. based on the power of the money power. But coming
Right.
back on point here, I'd like to just quietly close out, and then going to, once I post this, I'll ask my webmaster to open the comments. I usually don't, but I think, Michael, for our benefit and for our listeners' benefit, let them comment, and I will make the time, even though I, have a full days just like you. I'll curate the comments and see what we come up with. If it's substantive, which I believe it will be, then I think we should have another visit, another podcast, and go through, let's say the most
Yeah, listen, that'd be a good. That's a good idea.
misunderstandings or clarifications or concerns or whatever, because you know there are people out there that think, and I've never said I know everything. I'm gonna learn it all. No one can learn it all, but I just happened to stumble upon the Pilgrim Society very early on. There was a gentleman named Charles Savoy that brought it to my attention when I
Yes.
started the Silver Investor. I rebranded the Morgan Report well over a decade ago because we do a lot more than the silver market. But he brought the pill, and I was like, God, and I didn't think I knew everything, but I thought in my look down the rabbit hole, and I'd gotten pretty deep, that I would have thought of it or heard of it or known about it or whatever. No, that was the first time I heard of it. That was like 25 years ago now. But still,
Right.
there are people now that are in the alt media, we'll call it, that probably are hearing the Pilgrim Society for the first time. So I would say the Pilgrim Society is not a conspiracy theory. A conspiracy theory is something you got to think about. The word was brought up under the Kennedy assassination, and it's a mind control mechanism, in my view, where if you hear that, you
Right.
automatically dismiss any other thinking. What you really should do is say, is it true or is it false? Make it an absolute. It's either true or
Right.
it's false. So if it's a
Correct.
conspiracy theory, you've got to determine for yourself on your own to determine the amount of data, facts that you need to prove or disprove it. And it's a documented elite institution. We know it exists. We know who's been in it. They publish their members at times, and it's got
Or they leak out. They've been leaking out lately.
right. And it's basically the most powerful figures on the planet. And
Yes.
final question is, if the most powerful people of the elites in finance, politics, and media have been meeting behind closed doors for over 120 years, shouldn't we at least keep asking questions?
Yeah. Most people would assume anything that old probably is faded in its importance. But we've got some other factors involved with the way these guys operate. And one of them is they pass their activities in their family. And so most of these are bloodlines of people that go way back. And so consequently, that's how they keep control is they, I mean, Jeffrey Epstein's a good example currently of how part of the way they keep control of their system is they use blackmail. They're experts at blackmail. They know how to do it. They've been doing it, I'm going to say 4,000 years. So they know how to use money to get what they want most of the time. And then when that doesn't work, they have more, they take people out. They either marginalize them without killing them, or they eventually take them out. I mean, how is it that modern banking has so many banker suicides who jump off of tall buildings? I mean, that's ridiculous. That's because they they
So,
they 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 got into trouble for some reason, and that's how they keep their secrets. And so when you say conspiracy theory, there's an adjective and then there's a noun. And these are conspiracies. These aren't, there's
that's
nothing,
right. That's right.
these are conspiracies, and we have to use the word. A new word has developed in recent time, collusion,
Mm-hmm.
because people didn't want to say conspiracy. So I may have had something to do with that, but I didn't want to use the word conspiracy theory because it wasn't. But now I think we're back. We have to be back to these are people who conspire behind the scenes to take down and control humanity. And why are they like that? Well, there's a spiritual warfare going on here, and we can't deny that if we're going to get to the root of this problem. And that's what we're about, is letting people know that this exists. And so everything I have talked about, I can give you empirical proof of what I said. And that has been one of my objectives, is to get past the epithets and the rumors and all this kind of stuff and actually look at, okay, were the Khazarians real? What's their role? Were the Rothschilds real? What's their role? And we've been piecing this very large jigsaw puzzle for a long time, and it really goes back more than 120 years. We're talking about the origins of usury as the basis for their activity. And as long as we have usury, we're going to have wars, because that's the way they keep their banks going.
So for people that do want to follow through, where do they find more information? And by the way, I'll just do a public declaration that thank you for our friendship and saved me a lot of time, because, being on your mailing list and seeing some of the stuff, like there were a couple, honestly, I can't cite them for you, but it's like, wait a minute, I'm not sure about that. You've given me 3 links. I'm in the second link, and holy crap, he's right. I mean, there's enough evidence for me to be
Hey,
totally satisfied.
I'm a civil engineer. I don't play games with hearsay.
Yeah, I know that.
I just don't. Now I'll read it and I'll examine it to see if there's any validity to it.
Yeah.
But in the end, my conclusions are more, here are the facts. You decide.
Right. Yeah, I love that. So how do people learn more from you? Where do they go?
Okay, there's 2 sites where we publish a lot of this investigation. They're both we call them truth history sites. One is aimfortruth.org. That's AIM number 4 truth.org. And the other is americansforinnovation.com. That's one word, Americans plural, number 4 innovation.com.
Very good, Michael. I'm going to wrap it up here. I will look at the comments. So I'm sure I have another chat, and one that I'm working on, and I will get to it. One of my friends wrote, "Eat the Bankers." Not interesting, but it's a guy, Sinclair No is his name. He was a financial podcaster before we used the word podcaster. He was the master of ceremonies a couple of times at a couple of the major wealth protection conferences that I was keynote at. But Eat the Bankers gives a strong case on usury and why it is so detrimental. I have not finished reading the book. I'll look you in the eye. I want to finish that. I think we'll have a private off-record conversation, but I think I would really like to do a podcast on that. So anyway, just a heads up for people that follow far enough to make a determination of what's really going on. And
yes.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your website. And we will meet again.
Okay, David.